Food prices coming down in December thanks to cheaper sugar, dairy products, and vegetable oils, according to a new report from the UN. Still, prices remain near 19-month highs overall, and some staples are near records, including breakfast favorites, coffee, and orange juice. Joining me now, Richard Volpe, who is the former USDA economist and Cal Poly professor of agribusiness. Great to have you back on the program. Let's start with food overall. Average prices for food at home rose in November by the largest annual pace in a year. Where, to your best estimation, do you believe that they'll continue to move from here?
I do think that they will continue to trend up, and that is the normal pace of things. And it's also worth pointing out that the pace of inflation has picked up from the projections that we were running, or that the USDA was running earlier in the year. So we're still on track for food price inflation to come in lower than normal. We're used to grocery prices increasing maybe 2.5% per year. That's about the average over the last 20 years. We're looking to come in under that. There was a period of time where we were looking at maybe flat food prices in 2025, but there are a few problem spots that I'm sure we'll talk about today, which are pushing that up. So we're looking at maybe a point and a half at 2025 right now, assuming no more unpleasant surprises.
Certainly. Want to give folks some actionable tips before we get to those problem areas as well here. What are some actionable tips? How can consumers save money, even if we do continue to see some moderate and slightly below average food price inflation in 2025?
Well, so right now, the real problem spots, or most of the real problem spots, have to do with meat, dairy, and eggs, even though we have seen that recent dip in dairy prices, like you mentioned. But that's where we're still seeing the strongest price inflation. Those are the only categories where we're seeing food price inflation sort of beating that historical average. So if consumers are sort of willing to ride out the storm and sort of go light on those foods for the next few months, that's going to be one way to sort of see their grocery bill stay flat or even come down a little bit in the coming year. And it's still the case, regardless of what, may be coming out in some other media sources that I've seen. It is still the case that it is cheaper to purchase food and prepare it and consume it at home. It is not the case that eating away from home has become cheaper than eating at home. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And food price inflation for restaurant foods, even fast food, is still way above normal. And finally, I would just say, I think I say this every time you have me on, private labels, store brands, they are still an actionable way for consumers to save an easy 15-20% across the board in most spending categories.
Yeah, and so Ricky, with all of this in mind, some of the challenges that we've seen over the past couple of years, I mean, we've had egg CEOs on talking about the avian flu multiple times over, and now how that continues to trickle and play out through the prices in eggs, and how that was at least one of perhaps the thought processes that some consumers were thinking about going into the election. So even post-election now, and now in 2025, where is that ranking among the priority for consumers, and what are they set to continue to see, as it doesn't seem like the avian flu has just gone away and vanished?
No, eggs have been hit harder than any other supply chain in all of food, maybe in all consumer spending in the last couple of years. We've seen egg prices flirt with all-time record highs. And, it's important for me to stress, when I say that food prices have reached record highs, I mean adjusting for inflation. So it's common to see headlines that say, oh, food prices are at record highs. Usually people are talking about nominal prices, the sticker prices that you see in the store. Mm-hmm. But even controlling for the value of the US dollar, eggs were cheaper in the 70s and 80s when we had runaway food price inflation. So eggs, and just in general, that whole chicken, poultry, broiler, egg-laying hen supply chain, really problematic. And we sort of keep on seeing, like you said, these CEOs and these executives coming out and saying, well, if avian flu cools off, then we should see a return to normal. And that's true, because it's such an elastic supply chain. These animals, these chickens, they only take 5-6 weeks until they're market ready, or they're producing eggs every day. And that's the good news. But the bad news is that avian flu just sort of keeps on popping up. I mean, it's an overdone analogy, but it's kind of like whack-a-mole. The industry has gotten much better at sort of targeting and identifying these breakouts, and sort of eliminating the minimum amount of inventory to contain and prevent the spread. But it keeps on popping up in all the major egg producing states in the U.S.